Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from SpeechKids, where we teach little kids to talk and help parents understand their little kids. And today I'm delighted to be talking to Allison Morgan of Zensational Kids. Allison, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is so much fun.
So tell the good people, who you are, where you are, what you do, all the things.
Lovely. So by profession, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. Always worked with kids of different ages in different settings, mostly in schools. And about 18 years ago, I discovered yoga and mindfulness and just started integrating it into the therapeutic work that I was doing with my school-based OT clients, and was totally blown away by what I was seeing, which was they were just reaching their goals much faster. There was more connection, there was more engagement, there was more fun, there was more purpose. And I went on this mission of how can I teach this to more and more people? And that's what really led me to form Zensational Kids, which is the name of my company. And what we do now is work with schools that want to implement and integrate mindfulness into the fabric and the culture of their school. So we do a lot with training and educators, along with educating them on what really how to make part of the culture of school. And it really ties a lot into social emotional learning and character development, and things like that.
This is really interesting because I'm not sure, I actually don't know, because I'm so steeped in this world, how much the mindfulness, the yoga, the sort of the benefits of this mind-body connection have permeated the popular culture, particularly in education. Is this something that's readily embraced by schools when you go to them? Are they seeking you out, or are you going to them?
Yeah, well, when I started, the professionals that I was working with literally thought I was out of my mind.
Yeah.
They're like, you to be kidding me. You have a master's in occupational therapy and you're teaching your students yoga. And they were, they advised me, like, don't tell anybody. Nobody's going to want to know that you're doing this. And to me, it made no sense, only because I was always, still am, just for what works. Like, I'm steeped in the research. I love the science aspect of it. But when I have a kid in front of me that's nonverbal, behaviorally reactive, hiding under a desk, chewing on his shirt, I'm just going to do what works.
You're not going to work on handwriting?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
So I don't need to have a million research articles to tell me that when I calm myself down and I breathe deeply, I'm able to help a student, a child of any age, of any ability, calm themselves down. I'm going to do that if it works. So way back when I started, 18 years ago, of using this, and I didn't form Zensational Kids until about 9 years ago. Nobody was knocking on my door. They still were just like, yeah, schools, I don't know if schools are going to do this, but I was just always, I'm just going to do what is right for the kids. And I know that this works, so I'm just going to keep going. And I would run trainings, and therapists were into it, but not so much educators. And now we come to a time where there really is an abundant amount of empirical evidence showing that through these practices, we are changing our neurology, how our brain is wired. We are changing our physiology. We are changing our ability to regulate and relate to others. We could go so deep as to say we're changing our DNA, which is incredible, especially in the world of trauma, working with students that have been through trauma. So we have a ton of research now that there are, I'm never talking to a school that's like, yeah, tell me about this mindfulness stuff. Like, does it work? It's really more about when schools approach me is, does my process that I take them through, is it the right fit
Mhm.
with how like their culture
Mhm.
and faculty that they have and their leadership that
Mhm.
that they have? Because I'm not for like, oh, let's just do a training and you're all done. You got it. There really is a process that I take them through,
Mhm.
because it's not just about, well, what could we do for the kids? Like, how are we going to teach these kids mindfulness? How are we going to get these kids to be more mindful and more self-aware and have better self-management? There's more to do to that, and a lot of it has to do with the leadership and the educators that are serving these children. And you and I have talked about this several times, how, especially when you're working with kids, it's the state of mind, body, heart of the adult that's in the room, or the adult that's responsible for the care, that really creates the transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they
So
don't know how to do it themselves, because all the reasons that they find, all the ways that kids will find to sort of regulate themselves are not the right ways. They're the easy ways. They're the ones that seem to work, but they're not constructive long term.
exactly, they work in the moment because they typically will cause an adult to move into action
Yeah.
to change something about the adult,
Mhm.
to help change the student, the child.
Mhm.
But what we're hoping for is to teach these lifelong skills that become coping skills, that become ingrained,
Mhm.
really, like within their physiology, so that they know how
Yeah.
to, calm themselves, focus their attention, feel safe and secure.
You're getting a 1-2 punch, right? Because you're training the adults. You're no longer working directly with children all the time.
Right,
And then
right.
those adults are training up the next generation. So this is,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are the best model of, how to be mindful, how to be peaceful and calm and easeful and positive and loving and respectful and forgiving, all of these things like that we want our children to learn and embody in their life. And
mhm,
a lot of schools talk about that through their character ed.
mhm, mhm,
But really, these are things that children learn best through us. Sometimes they are in situations where they don't have appropriate adults in their life to model that for them. We
mhm,
work with many schools that they're in, very, very low socioeconomic, high poverty, high trauma, high violence type of environments. And it's really in the school
mhm,
where they have that really good, solid, caring
mhm.
modeling and mentor for these things. So I always say that when we're working with children, they're learning these concepts, or they're learning these skills through us first. And that really aligns with what we know about our neurology, right? Our neurology is designed to hook up to other people's neurology and physiological state, right?
And
And
I'm
that's the
not
whole.
sure that I'm not, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that most people have ever thought about that sort of intellectually, and yet we know it to be true, right? On those days, I'm constantly telling parents of toddlers this, right? On the day that you have plenty of time to get out the door and you're relaxed, guess who puts on their shoes immediately the first time you ask? And then you've got 15 extra minutes, right? Whereas on the day that you're late and you're fussing and, oh my God, where's the paper and the thing and the thing? And then nobody's getting anywhere on time, even
Right.
less so.
That's when they can't find their shoes. They don't want their shoes on. They don't like those shoes. You get the shoes on. I don't like the socks. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And, I had a really good, a really, really good OT friend of mine explain that at one point of, this notion of some people, Dan Siegel calls it the flipped lid, or this fight or flight, right? Learning mode versus protection mode. Um, and that sort of amping up, which is a state that many kids who have experienced trauma, certainly kids who are experiencing, other stressors in their lives, they're in this constant state of stress, and they're not in a learning mode until they can get their body under control and regulated. But kids can't do that themselves.
Right.
Not all the time.
Well, self-regulation is on a continuum, right? We really don't fully develop the skill of self-regulating, which is an executive function skill, right? Our executive function ability really is not solidified. And even then, you know, in the literature, they say like around 21, you know, in your early 20s. But the reality is that our brain is constantly changing daily and moment by moment based on our experience. So we always have the ability to learn, but you cannot expect, you know, a 2-year-old to be able to self-regulate the way even a 5-year-old would.
And there's a lot of changes even in those early years
Oh,
that are happening, and even more so than you. I mean, every age and stage has its thing, right? So, but you said something interesting before we started recording, which was, you know, this notion of training the trainers, because rather than interacting now directly one therapist to one client, you are able to, you know, sort of bring along an entire ecosystem. And so explain how that works, particularly in a pandemic. Like, what happens?
Yeah, it's sort of like the gift of where we are right. You know, having to Zoom and having to work with schools in this way. So very often there are schools that like having myself, my team come in, and we work directly in their classrooms with their students. And that's sort of, I usually say, like, that's the easy way out. It's the most expensive way, but it's the easy way out, because then the teachers could check out, and they could go on a prep, or they could go answer emails, things like that. But in that scenario, or even when I was a therapist, you know, if I was working, or, you know, you do this every day, one-on-one with a child, and then they go back to their parent, that therapy session was great, but how do you get carryover? And the same thing in the situation where we go into a classroom and we're working with the students and the teacher's checking out. It's wonderful. Like, we could get kids to use our tools to learn how to calm themselves, to find more inner peace. But then that teacher returns to that classroom with their general habits and, you know, repertoire. And because of this pandemic, I mean, this has really always been our model, but even more so now for all the schools, where we're doing more of training the teachers how they can share these practices with their students and with themselves. So it's really requiring more people to learn the tools that they need to shift their own physiology and neurology, so that they can help students do that on their own. So it really strengthens each child's ability to develop these skills, because they now have more opportunities to practice them, because the people that are with them the most often, like for you, it's the parent, for me, it's the educator, you know, we're there just for a little blip. They're there for hours and hours and hours. So they can offer little elements of what we were doing in that little blip over and over and over again. And we're talking about rewiring. We're talking about rewiring the brain, rewiring this nervous system and this mind-body connection. It doesn't happen in a vacuum of like one time a week. You know, when I was just doing therapy, that was the thing that was always so frustrating to me in a school setting. I would see my students, you know, once, twice, 3 times a week, but in this vacuum of my therapy room, and then it was done, you know? So
one of the things I think, and you're getting exactly to it, it's particularly when you love what you do, which you and I both do, it's so easy to get into that groove of, I'm doing the thing I do best, right? So in your case, right, you're connecting kids with their bodies. That's so easy for you. It's so effortless. And it's so effortful at first for those teachers. They feel
Oh,
all out of sorts.
well, look, we all like familiarity, right?
Right.
Because it becomes part of our habit and we don't have to think. We really don't have to be aware. It takes energy to be aware
Yeah.
and to learn something new.
But the thing that Zoom really, I'm going to speak from personal experience. The thing that
Mhm.
Zoom forces me to do is not go into my song and dance, which is so easy for me. I know that routine down pat, right? Now I've got to pause. Okay, how am I going to get this, my avatar essentially, right,
Sure.
to
Mhm.
do what I would do in this situation, given that I'm not physically present? And in my case, I'm doing this, the child never even knows I'm there. So this is another sort of twist
Yeah,
that,
explain how you're doing this because I find it just so
so
brilliant. So
fun.
I know that the listeners here will just
Yeah.
learn a lot just from this simple explanation of how you do this.
So when the pandemic started, it was clear that there were going to be these kids who were not suited to like sit and be on Zoom, right? So I turned my camera off. I had the parents put in a headset, and then I can see the room, nanny cam style, and observe the child and the parent interacting. And then I can change what the parent is doing because I'm talking to them in the headset. And then the parent can imitate me directly. In fact, today, before we jumped on this call, I was saying beep beep, and anybody walking by would have thought I was completely crazy. But I'm watching this interaction, and the parent was pushing the car, and we needed a sound effect. So I said beep beep. Guess what? Parent says beep beep, and kid says, guess what? Beep beep. Right. So, but I don't get in the way in
Mhm.
that scenario. And so I'm able in this, similar to what you're doing, is building capacity for the person who's there all the time, teaching them how to use these skills in the
Yeah.
moment, in daily routines, in those throwaway nothing moments where
Mhm.
nothing seems to be happening. And yet, of course, when you're
There's so much happening.
co-regulated, there's so much happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And here you have an opportunity for that parent will remember that a lot more than if you wrote it on a sheet of paper. When you're holding a car, make sure you say beep, beep. So this parent is going to practice this, you know, probably 10, 50 times before the next session that you have with them,
exactly.
helping that child every single time they're going to hear beep, beep, beep,
That's exactly it. Yeah.
creating on those neurological links. So
Yeah. Yeah.
for for me, from my viewpoint, there's so many things that when COVID hit and we had to totally change our model, and you as well, to be totally on Zoom, totally remote, it's easy to just like go into overwhelm. Like, yeah, how am I going to do that? I'm always face to face. I'm always right in front of the teachers that I'm teaching and the students that I'm teaching. And if you just allow yourself to sort of see the blessing and the opportunity, it does present itself. It does so
And
much so
what's
that
interesting?
I don't know how
Sorry,
much I will go back to my other model.
I was thinking the same thing. And yet I have people who are saying to me, when we go back, I can't wait to go back. And there are many things I think that we will keep because it's better. I'm seeing that it's better. The parents are experiencing that. Your teachers are experiencing it. That interstitial part is hard, right? Change is hard.
Yeah.
But to see the results from this, sort of improved fidelity to the approach, which is train the trainer, right? Um, it works. It's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I mean, and the proof is also in the pudding. Like in your regard, your kids are probably reaching their goals a lot faster.
Yes.
And for me, I have more schools being able to convert to fully implementing the program in more classrooms
Yeah.
than if we did this. We go to a certain number of classrooms the first week, then the next week, then the next week. And it's also, economy of scale.
Mhm.
Like right now, I could train 200, 300 people at one time,
Mhm.
and they've got a front row seat.
Right.
to what I'm teaching them and to my slides.
Mhm.
And they're home or they're in their individual classroom while they're logging in. So them doing practices for the first time, they're not worried about what the person sitting next to them at a training is doing or
Yeah.
talking, or shoving notes to each other,
Yeah.
just like the kids do.
Yeah.
They're really participating.
Mhm.
So yeah,
So
so there
nice.
have been interesting benefits
Yeah.
to all of this.
We're going to leave it there for now, but this was so much fun. Thank you, Allison, for
Yeah,
coming and
you.
having this
Thank you.
conversation. If people want to find out more about you, where can they do that?
Best thing is to go to our website, www.zensationalkids.com. I also have a free ebook that they can download, which would give them immediate tools that they could use with kids of every age.
Perfect. And we'll
Yeah.
link to that in the show notes, for lack of a better word. So we'll have links for all of that. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.